Hi everyone, welcome to the second video, the end of the 2000s. We are going to jump right in from where we left off in 2005, also in August of 2005, with the flooding of New Orleans due to Hurricane Katrina. So in August of 2005, the end of August 2005, a Category 5 hurricane known as Hurricane Katrina landed in Florida and Louisiana. Over 1,800 people were killed in total, and the damage done was over $125 billion. People lost absolutely everything when this occurred. Some images here for you. Those are in the top left picture. Those are houses completely submerged underwater. And there on your right, part of this National Geographic video that I recommend, Doomed New Orleans. You can find that on YouTube. You can see in that when the levees broke and the city of New Orleans was flooded, it happened very quickly and very suddenly. And as a result, it's a bridge, those are streets where there were once people driving, and instead of roads and overpasses, all you can see is water. On November 22nd, 2005, Angela Merkel was appointed Germany's first female chancellor. Merkel has been widely described as the de facto leader, the assumed leader of the European Union. She is the most powerful woman in the world, and following the election of Donald Trump as the United States president in 2016, many commentators believe that she is also the new leader of the free world. She is up for re-election in 2021, and although she is very popular, she has said that at that point, it will be 16 years of being the chancellor, the head of Germany, she will not seek re-election at that point. Something a little fun for you, in August of 2006, Pluto was demoted to dwarf planet status. So you all did not learn about Pluto as a planet when you were in school, but I did, having learned about Pluto in the 1990s. But Pluto was officially demoted to its dwarf planet status in August of 2006. Then in October of 2006, North Korea declared that it had successfully tested a nuclear weapon. North Korea demonstrated its nuclear capabilities with its first underground nuclear test by detonating a plutonium-based device. This caused the global community to increase their concerns over North Korea's nuclear capabilities. Then in January of 2007, Apple changed the entertainment, the communications world, really the everything world, when it debuted the iPhone. In 2007, 1.4 million iPhones were sold. And just 8 years later, in 2015, 230 million iPhones were sold. I am sure that many of you have iPhones. I know that I do. They are the technology piece that kind of sets the stage for all of the other phones. Many other companies followed suit, created smartphones of their own that could do all of the sudden what Apple could do. It was a computer, internet, cell phone, and music all in one. It changed, it revolutionized the communications world. In the fall of 2007, the Saffron Revolution occurred in Myanmar. It was a series of economic and political protests and demonstrations that took place after there were dramatic increases in both oil and gas prices. What makes this revolution unique is that the protests were led by students, political activists, and largely Buddhist monks. This was, as the Buddhist monks should, clue you into, a non-violent resistance. They used a non-violent standard to protest and to make demonstrations against the government's increase of oil and gas prices. Then in February of 2008, Fidel Castro resigned as president of Cuba. He was the longest serving non-royal head of state in the 20th and 21st centuries, but he was divisive. His supporters viewed him as a champion of socialism, but his critics view him as a dictator whose administration oversaw human rights abuses, the exodus of a large number of Cubans, which we talked about when that happened in the late 1950s and the early 1960s, and the impoverishment of the country's economy. He made Cuba a communist country, and when he died on November 25th, 2016, it was with much celebration for Cubans that had lived under his reign and many of whom had escaped to the United States. This was not a cause for sadness, but instead a cause for celebration when he did die in November of 2016. Then in March of 2008, Dmitry Medvedev was elected to be the next president of Russia. Putin could not run for a third consecutive term. There were two. He could serve 2 terms in a row. He can serve more than 2 terms, as he's clearly serving a term now, but he couldn't have them be all in a row. They couldn't be consecutive. So after Putin was unable to run for a third consecutive term, Dmitry Medvedev ran instead, essentially propped up by Putin to run, and Dmitry Medvedev then named Putin to be his prime minister. So Putin never really left the government. He, instead of being president, simply served as prime minister, but he did much of the ruling, both behind and in front of the scenes. They technically ruled as a president and prime minister, but they really ruled more practically as a 2-headed government known as a government by tandem. Putin was then elected again in 2012. At that point, he changed the terms to 6 years. He ran again in 2018 and won, and so now he is in office until at least 2024, but quite possibly for longer than that. Then in the fall of 2008, we see the Great Recession and the financial crisis occur of 2008. At the end of 2007, the United States entered its longest post-World War II recession, known as the Great Recession. And the country was faced with this, as well as a major financial crisis known as the 2008 financial crisis, the largest depression since the 1930s to that point, that hit the economy beginning in September of 2008. This was all caused by a massive burst of the housing bubble and bad lending practices. Unemployment at this point rose to 10%. 1 out of every 10 people was not employed during this time. This was a financial crisis that hit families all over the country. It is likely that you, your family, or someone that your family knew was affected because of this financial crisis. And finally, to end the first decade of the 2000s, on November 4th, 2008, Barack Obama and Joe Biden beat John McCain and Sarah Palin in the 2008 presidential election. Obama was sworn in as president on January 20th, 2009. In doing so, he became the 44th president of the United States and the first African American to hold the office of the presidency. He won a decisive victory over McCain and Palin in that election, but he did face some major issues, especially earlier on in his presidency. He took action right away to fix, to work towards, and then eventually help to fix the financial crisis, and also in his first term, in those first few years of it, worked to eventually end the Iraq War in 2011 and bring the troops home. That ends the 2000s. You are going to, for your assignment with the end of the 2000s, choose something that we have discussed in this last set of slides. So something from talking about Hurricane Katrina, Angela Merkel, Pluto, North Korea, the Apple iPhone debuting, the Saffron Revolution, Fidel Castro resigning, Medvedev being elected, the Great Recession and financial crisis of 2008, or the election of Barack Obama to become the 44th president of the United States. Choose one of those issues and do a little bit more research on it, answer those questions on the sheet accompanying this, and turn that in to complete it. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you all have a great week.